Welcome, everybody, to RPM's Logistics Challenges and Solutions live stream. Pleasure to be with all of you at the table. I'll get it right into it. A couple weeks ago, we were in Mexico City for the ALSC Mexico conference. Mexico being a hot topic across the automotive landscape, really across the logistics landscape. If you think about nearshoring efforts through not only the automotive sector, but plenty of organizations are looking to sort of repatriate supply chains in the wake of COVID. And I think Mexico is a massive part of that strategy, and that was very evident at the conference. But we were mostly focused on, obviously, automotive challenges. And I think when you look at what's going on in Mexico, you have a number of parties that are struggling with sort of the dynamics at play down in Mexico, whether it's the railroads, whether it's the capacity market, and just the customers themselves trying to get goods not only into production facilities, but ultimately those finished goods distributed to their end consumer. So, some of the big takeaways from that conference were certainly, what will happen with the rail. We know the rail is a big part of logistics distribution strategy for our outbound finished vehicle production customers, i.e. the OEMs, and they continue to have challenges as it relates to that. We also know Chinese imports have caused dynamics in the market that have shifted who, what, when, where needs to support this inbound volume or import volume. And it's really challenged sort of the logistics landscape as a whole. But when I think about the biggest component, it's definitely the rail, which I think Jeff is probably our resident rail expert in the room. And I would really want to get your perspective on how you see that playing out as it relates to Mexico and the ripple effect across North America.
Yeah, Mexico has always been a challenge for rail supply, just based on its geographic location and how it fits in the network and the size of demand that comes out of there with the manufacturing that's shifted down to Mexico. So to get vehicles out of Mexico has been one of the largest challenges that our customers face. And it's one that they really started to overcome this year, I feel. They put in different solutions with a different plan around how they were going to utilize ocean, a different plan about moving vehicles cross-border that they weren't utilizing in the past, and really trying to realign where they could find capacity, not necessarily always the standard modes that we were used to seeing, and being able to put that in place, implement it, run the play. They're in a much different position at the end of year this year in terms of inventory on the ground in Mexico than where they were last year. And that's because of all the different things that they've done in terms of ocean, trucking, and different types of rail options that they've been looking at. So I think it's been really the most exciting part for me has been that we've been able to be part of that solution with them. We've been able to come up with ideas to help relieve some of the problems down in Mexico. We've been an actual part of providing better output for them, better solutions, and better options of what they can do. Giving them more things to look at. It's going to continue to be a problem. Production is still going to be strong in Mexico, if not growing. And it's going to pose, it's going to open up the door for more options and opportunities for people to come up with solutions that are going to solve those problems of getting vehicles out of Mexico. And I know that that's going to also cause problems or room for solutions on the freight side too. So what does that look like?
Absolutely. When I think about Mexico, and you're right, it's booming down there. It is, Mexico's our number one trade partner in the U.S. now. Mm-hmm. And although we find ourselves in a freight recession and capacity is actually plentiful right now in the freight sector, haul away for finished vehicles is actually really tight down there. And so in comes RPM with solutions, and we are actually hauling vehicles for customers right now on open deck flatbeds. I had the pleasure of being down in Laredo, Texas back in October, where I got to meet with 7 incredible carriers, expanding our open deck flatbed network down there. and the narrative is across the board the same with all these freight carriers. We have capacity. Load us up with something. They don't care if it's cars, electronics, or whatever it is. So that's what we're doing in the freight market, and we're helping solve some problems in this vehicle hallway market that we're experiencing down in Mexico. Seneca, what do you think about technology in terms of impacting cross-border logistics?
When I think about cross-border, I think about chain of custody. What's that going to look like for us? Understanding that equation and building technology solutions around it. I think about the capacity question we're all talking about right here. I think that's going to be important, capturing and profiling and those types of things. We think about that at a regional scale, right, in this conversation, but I think it's a global scale for us as well that we really have to answer going into 2024.
Definitely.
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, when I look at what's happening in Mexico, I kind of think of it as the epicenter of the earthquake that's sending out these aftershocks across North America. Because, you know, we're helping support customers getting vehicles out of Mexico to border towns like Laredo. But that is now challenging the North American distribution network because these vehicles were never intended to be crossed in these spots or end up in certain parts of the country. And now those still need to get to their end dealer or their end consumer in the way that they had intended when they planned the network 12 or 18 or 24 months ago. And now you're going to a haul-away market that in North America is challenged, not even accounting for what's happening south of the border. And I think when I think of how we distribute those vehicles in the most efficient way from a new origin point, a lot of what that's predicated on is technology being able to sort of Tetris that picture together, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think just in kind of a broad stroke, I think we have to, move faster, right, with technology. Technology is a force multiplier, right, as a lot of people would say. I think there's a lot of opportunity to think about how we control those transactions and how we move them around for sure, and the speed to market at which we can get them.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, and Jeff, you mentioned it. I mean, vehicle on-ground inventory was insane at the end of 2022. It's healthier than it is today, but in reality, most of these vehicles that have been produced are late already in some form or fashion because they've been determining what the mitigation strategy should be. And so that speed is really what they're looking for when they're finally able to get sort of into a distribution channel in a lot of cases.
Right. So like you said, the network is utilizing facilities that haven't been utilized before for distributing finished vehicles. New ports because of port capacities.
Yep.
Really being maxed out. New plans with vessels that weren't on these routes in the past. Different types of rail cars to try to bring in different capacity, different types of trucks to bring in capacity. It's all about fulfilling that need, and it's going to be a step-by-step process of getting there. We're still not there, but we've made gains. Like the industry has made gains in terms of what's on the ground there. And that plays into what is going to happen in 2024. And there's always going to be a new problem in the supply chain, and rail is going to continue to be there in terms of empty rail supply into Mexico, empty rail supply into Canada. We also saw we're making cross-border moves out of Canada too, just to get into a rail conveyance or going direct to dealer out of there. That was something different that we didn't see previously. But there's just going to be more problems that we know are coming and ones that we don't know are coming. So a new thing that we know is coming that has recently popped up is the Panama Canal, right? That is a huge problem for ro-ro vessels trying to go from Asia over to the east coast of North America, and what the normal plan is for those vehicles. Some customers are already choosing to land those vehicles in the West Coast because they know that they're going to incur huge delays. There's limits on how many vessels are being allowed through the Panama Canal on a daily basis in place, and those are going to be strict guidelines in 2024. There's no near-term solution for that problem. So that impacts the network as a whole. That means less volume coming into the East Coast ports, less need for that haulaway capacity, and more need for it in a place where it wasn't needed before off the West Coast, trying to get east. It's long haul moves that aren't part of the normal network today. So we are going to be part of trying to provide those solutions to our customers and make sure that they have an answer to the problems that they're starting to see.
Yeah, Jeff, there's always going to be problems, right? And we're watching the Panama Canal very closely. We're watching what's happening in the Red Sea. We see what's happening with the rail lines here. It's just shuffling of the deck per se. There are cars in places where they're not supposed to be. And I think that's where we take a lot of pride in here at RPM and having elite carrier relationships, and we rely on those partners, and thankfully we have great relationships with them in all 48 states, and we're multimodal experts here as well. And I don't think we're afraid of these challenges. And if there weren't challenges, we wouldn't be in business, right? There's always a problem to solve with a customer. The news right now is just what I stated earlier, and I don't know what else is going to happen in 2024, but you can be sure there's going to be more problems to solve, and we, with our great carrier partners, we're ready to tackle them.
Yeah, and I'd say, part of our solution is, and part of what we are bringing to the table that makes us stand out, is how we optimize our network, because we're dealing with so many different people, different entities, different customers, and how that network pieces together to optimize it to make sure that trucks are running the least amount of loaded miles possible and being as efficient as possible, being as green as possible, and that we're optimizing those loads to make sure that they have the least amount of stops, and that they can efficiently go from point A to point B. And we've got some proprietary software tools that we're putting in place to make sure that happens. And Synica, you can talk to some of those.
Yeah, I think when we talk about proprietary tools, we're talking about load building, right? We've made great strides with not only algorithms, but also ML to think about load building in a different format than we have previously. No longer is it a person building a thing, right? But we're going to let the system do that. And I think we're going to, when I talk to Tony quite often about this, it's profiling our profiling carriers in general, and making sure we understand the capacity question from them and who they are and what they want and what they're looking for. I think we'll marry both of those together to really get to an attractive build. You'll hear me say this quite often, but get to an attractive build that I think changes from just strict optimization to really creating loads that people want and desire day after day, year after year. I think that's super important for us. I would say profiling, piggyback off of that. That's a huge initiative to think about not only a carrier, but a customer as well, and really dive into who they are and what their requirements are. I think the biggest strength for RPM will always be our ability to solution and solve problems, but also pivot quickly. The market changes. I've seen that happen year over year, us meet the challenges. And I think we meet it with not only tech, but the relationships that we build, not only through our customers, but through our carriers. Yeah, for sure. What do you think about that, Sean?
And to pick up on what you're saying in terms of our customers' needs, I mean, Jeff alluded to it. As we go forward in 2024, the automotive landscape is changing, whether you look at new models launching and what that does to, parts inbound in terms of what those are going to be needed to launch new models. If you think about production disruptions that come with new model launches, and undoubtedly will challenge certain distribution patterns, which only puts more stress on optimizing what is actually available to be distributed through what will happen with high interest rates and sales velocity, and what the response will be from the marketplace at large around that. I think all of it leads to 2024 is going to be a very pivotal year, where I think a seesaw 3 years post COVID has presented our customers a lot of different challenges, and I think many of them are looking at 2024 as maybe a year of stabilization, but I think everything we've highlighted so far says stabilization is probably a false narrative that you'd be buying into at this point, because we know that, especially in the automotive industry, most of what they do every day is predicated on repetition, and every piece of what we're talking about disrupts that repetition. So I think there's not going to be a shortage of opportunities to continue to leverage a deep carrier network to support different distribution patterns, or leverage new technologies we're bringing on to really meet them in the moment, which I think there's going to be a lot of those moments in 2024. But yeah, I think I want to turn a little bit of the attention to, I think, what we're going to see in 2024 related to not only the freight market, but the automotive industry. I'll start with the freight market. As Tony mentioned, we're in a freight recession. Capacity by most measures is plentiful. But we're walking into an election year. We've staved off a recession. I think we could see some sprouts of that sort of icy cold over the industry lifting, but I'm not quite sure, Tony, from your perspective, what you're seeing or hearing from the carrier community on that front.
Yeah, it's ugly out there in the freight world, right? It is a shipper's market. I think shippers are buying well right now. Carriers are hurting. My trips in 2023 to visit the carrier network was a lot of narrative about, hey, we have trucks, please fill them with anything. Mm-hmm. Some of these carriers are willing to branch out and do stuff that they don't normally do, take on lanes and even modes that they don't normally do. Being the finished vehicle auto hauling experts we are, I'm even getting freight carriers asking, hey, can I get in the calling cars game, right? I got that question more than a few times because they know how tight capacity is in that specialized sector. So even those companies are locking in on where potential opportunity is. And for anybody who wants to get into that, please reach out to RPM. We'll set you up with a couple Stinger trailers. But what to expect in 2024 is more of the same, I would say, in the freight side. Unfortunately, you'd probably have to see a little bit more capacity exit the market before we see an equilibrium of those rates, like I think we were probably used to pre-COVID, maybe. Mm-hmm. But you're right, that seesaw over the last 3 years has been a wild ride. And shippers took a lot of pain back in 2021 and early 2022. Freight kind of fell off the cliff middle of the summer there in 2022, and we've been in that market ever since. I have no reason to believe it's going to change through Q1 and Q2 of this upcoming year. But again, I think the real opportunity here to solve some pretty complex issues for vehicle-facing customers is in the hallway vehicle market, which I think we do a hell of a job doing.
Yeah, I think 2024 for vehicle logistics capacity it's always going to be tied to what sales look like.
Yep.
And sales are predicted to be stronger in 2024 than they were in 2023. It's showing right now, as we are in the end of December, that the industry is going to come in at about 15.3 million vehicles. Mm-hmm. And next year is going to be around 16 million. So what does that mean? More need for capacity, more need for different types of options of distributing vehicles. So many things come into play of what's going to happen with sales to answer that question, right? Like there's, as you mentioned, interest rates. What's happening with those? Right now, we're currently predicted that it's going to come down and that the Fed's going to lower interest rates multiple times next year. That's going to incentivize sales. It's showing that dealer stock levels are going up. Right now, the industry in terms of dealer inventory is at 48 days supply. The norm has been 70 in the past. So we're still well below that. But last year we were at 38 days. So all that supply and demand, the basis of economics is going to drive what happens, but also transaction prices of vehicles. Those have been near an all-time high of around $46,000 a vehicle, if you can imagine that as an average for a sales price of a vehicle. And that's including incentives. And it went down for the first time last month, like 6 consecutive months of going up. And then incentives off of that. So incentives started to go up. So we're starting to see some equalizing in terms of what's happening with price level vehicles, sales, and then stock levels. Even though they're below the norm, it's the type of vehicles that are in stock and what the consumer wants to actually have or go out and purchase. A lot of the high-end luxury vehicles are what's on stock in dealer inventory. A lot of electric vehicles, because the market has not reacted as predicted to electric vehicle availability, and a lot of the more economic models are very low stock.
Yeah.
So as manufacturers catch up, because they don't have the headwinds of chip shortages, they don't have the COVID issues. Like, we've been out of sync with demand in terms of vehicle production and supply for the last 2 to 3 years, because of the huge disruptions in the manufacturing of what they're able to manufacture.
So does that cause a different disruption if they're going to right size production to certain models based on demand of those models? Like, do you start to shift parts to certain factories to support building different models because these models aren't selling, which just perpetuates a new cycle of disruption?
Right. There's been recent announcements of reduction in certain vehicle production because of CAF requirements and because of supply or inventory levels of those vehicles. So it's going to be a lot of decision making by the OEMs of how they're going to play this out. What's the right strategy on electric versus hybrid versus ICE, and what are the right numbers to supply to the market of what's going to get consumed in the market? Because if you overproduce on these different options, then you're stuck with inventory. So it's going to be a lot of wait and see what happens and react to consumer demand, I think. But the demand is going to be there. Is a good thing.
Right. But what I'm hearing, I maybe I'm hearing wrong, is that if you're building more to what the market is telling you, that only creates more sort of variability or volatility in those production cycles, which, I mean, plays into what we want to do every single day, which is absorb that volatility and variability in their production, know the distribution won't be perfect, or know that the milk runs for the inbounds won't be perfect, but really continue to optimize that picture every single day. And make sure we're doing it within SLAs and doing it with the quality that they expect. So I feel like 2024 will present us not with the headwinds you mentioned, which challenge production, but its own set of new variables that challenge production. So we could get much more of the same.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's, as you said, a whole different set of challenges that we'll face in the next year. But the industry as a whole has overcome a lot in 2023, and it's just in a better position overall to take on whatever happens in 2024. And I'm talking network capacity wise. I feel that there's been a lot more added to the network, different routes, different ways of distributing vehicles. The OEMs being more willing to vary from their routed, optimized plan because they know they have to. They can't keep that. So that just opens up different opportunities for us and for everybody in the industry.
Yeah, the secret to success of being a great broker is just finding the right carrier for the right load, right? And to tie up two things from Synica and Sean here. Sean, you're talking about meeting customers' SLAs and making sure they're serviced. And Synica, you're talking about profiling, measuring everything you can about these carriers, even down to the driver level, and understanding if there's underperforming drivers who work at certain companies is what we're going to be tackling here in 2024. We're so excited to do that. One driver who can't follow instructions shouldn't put a black eye on that carrier company, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm so excited to revamp our carrier scorecarding system into some of these standards down to the driver level in 2024. and meeting those customer SLAs. And those SLAs we saw in 2023 were changing as these new disruptions were coming in, and new pieces of business seemingly popped up out of thin air because of these disruptions, and they still held us to that same standard, the typical SLAs, and we had to execute. And when I think about 2024, I got to hit the road even more so than I did in 2023 with the rest of the carrier leadership here. We got to get ahead of it, get in front of these carriers, let them know how much they mean to us, because I know regardless of the challenges we face in 2024, great relationships with great carriers will allow us to tackle whatever is ahead of us.
I think it means a lot what you said about the right carrier for the right load, and the driver level management, and making sure that everybody involved understands what customer requirements are and what's necessary at the customer facing delivery points that we're working with. And that's about us communicating the right information, us mentoring our partners to make sure that they understand everything that they need to know in order to act properly and meet our customer requirements. Another thing is just the whole technology part of it, and delivering all that information in a usable format, ease of access, and having that everything in front of them so that they can succeed. So they have everything they need, and they have full visibility to the requirements. And I know that's another thing that we're working on here.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I think it's more, 2024 is more of a data first approach when we think about applications and building them. I think also we want quantifiable data for the carriers, right? And the customers. So we can go back and we can air quote speak with data to them and show them where they're doing good at and where they're not doing so great at, and partnering with them and helping them perform better. But you got to capture all of that, and it's a lot of information, right? And requirements change over time for the customer.
Yep.
Right. And then we have different expectations on the carrier, and we got to be able to pivot with that as well.
And yeah.
Ooh.
All of us turn to you, Synica.
Okay. Is 2024? Okay. Is 2024 the year of automation and generative AI tools? 100%. We have a couple initiatives that are in kind of the POC phase right now with those, using those tools. I'm not going to go super in depth about them, but we're extremely excited. We've been working on kind of what that's going to look like in 2023, but we're going to extend that out in 2024. I think it goes everything from using AI to help profile, right?
Yeah.
Machine learning to help build the loads properly, giving different options to the builder at the time, letting them take control and make tactical and strategic solutions for the customer and for us. But yeah, I would definitely say 2024, we definitely have automation goals in place to automate as much as possible. But always like to say this, it isn't that we're going to automate people away, right? Because that's always scary. The answer is we want to turn some roles from doing one thing today to something new tomorrow.
Yeah.
The thing technology can't and will never do is build relationships, right? Yeah. You want the people component in there. And I think we let those people get a better quality of life around their job, and really focus on the things that people can do, which is hone those relationships, build them, know them. AI is never going to call you up and ask you how your kid's doing. Yeah. Right. And if it does, you're not going to like it. But you want to hear a person on that end. And that's how we have the people that we work with and pivot quickly and meet all those challenges through those relationships. 100%. You have thoughts about that, Tony?
Yeah. Seneca, if it can be automated, it should, but not everything can. And I deal with this on a human level every single day up there on the third floor, talking to my carrier sales reps. Is the machine taking my job? And no, the machine is actually going to change your job, right? The analogy I give them is pretend you're working on an assembly line. The year is 1980. You have a screwdriver in your hand, and your job is to put the screw in the part as it rolls down the assembly line. And then one day somebody rolls out a little robotic arm that does that human's job 10 times faster with 10 times less mistakes. And it doesn't call off sick the day after the Super Bowl, right? And that person, oh, the machine took my job. No, mister. Step back here behind the machine. I'm going to show you how to operate 10 of them, and I'll even pay you more money to do it, right? So some of this technology that Synica is talking about is here now. We've rolled it out here amongst our carrier reps of the marketplace with Transportation. Some stuff we're developing behind the scenes, and the goal is to not replace any carrier sales rep, because you can't, you never will. But the goal is to change their role, and we'll even pay them more, right? And make them more efficient and help and focus them on solving complex issues that our customers present to us that the machines can't do.
Yeah, I would agree.
Seneca, I want to pick up on something you said about a data-first approach, because when I think about complex network challenges, we know a lot of our customers have antiquated systems that don't necessarily allow them to visualize most of what they're doing every day. It's flowing through systems that were built before some of us maybe at the table were even born. And realistically, as someone who's tech armed, we should be bringing to the table the slice of the network we get to see, also the slice of our entire network that they don't get to see, whether it's across a multi-customer sort of data set or within a regional data set of sort of multiple customers we see, to really arm them with, I think, more market intelligence around what other similar customers might be doing, or, hey, based on what you've given RPM to support, here's what we see in sort of your behavior that can inform maybe better strategy moving forward, which is really, I think, something we've gotten more adept at doing. But I get really excited because, you know, we've been in front of customers the last 2 years armed with data that I think we think is powerful. But if we're going to sort of supercharge that, what I hear is that moving to a much more data first approach will only give us the ability to articulate that story deeper and probably open up better conversations around where else our network can be powerful for them. I mean, I was just with a customer 2 days ago, and we're looking at a graph of everything we support in their network, and we aren't really west of the Mississippi if you look at the United States, and that opens up the dialogue around we know you distribute vehicles across the other half of America. Why are we not looking at that? And if you pan out and look at our network, we do a number of different distributions across similar infrastructure, if you will, that we could support you in as well, and sort of create a flywheel effect like we've done in other sort of distribution points around the country. Especially when I think of, you know, like a Baltimore, for instance, where every OEM is pretty much sending a vehicle through Baltimore at this point, or has used it at some point as a strategic landing spot. How do we sort of show that we have these sort of built-in network advantages that they only can just sort of add to the speed that already exists, and create much more of a flywheel effect. And then, go ahead.
I was just say, when I too get really excited about data, sometimes a little too excited. But it's the very unique thing that we have that other people don't, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all people have data. All companies have data of some fashion. But we have a unique form where we touch different parts of these industries, not only in the finished vehicle, but remarketing space too, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have singles out there. We have all of these different avenues to get these units. And I think we really start to understand it. But what makes me excited is being able to go back to other parts of the organization, talking to the carrier rep, dealing with the operations, in sales, and arming internal folks with that data. So when they do speak to the customers, they have their own independent source, completely separate from the data that's given by maybe the customer that you're looking at.
Yep.
And air quote, leveling all of us up with that data. And thinking about how we can present it differently, how we can give that data back to the customer and show them portals, big topic as of late.
Yep.
Having those available. So all of that combined, I think, is super exciting. And 2024 is definitely the year of data as a whole.
I'm glad you mentioned remarketing. I think we haven't talked about it enough, but as I mentioned, that 3-year cycle that's been pretty crazy in the vehicle world. I mean, when I stepped into this business, used cars were all the rage because the OEMs couldn't produce a new vehicle. We've watched that market completely change over the last 18 months. And as I look forward to 2024, I see the remarketing space starting to really come back, and we're already seeing green shoots of it, certainly. But we view remarketing as a huge complementary part of the network we've built for OEMs, where we can start to return capacity to origin points through our used car and remarketing volume. We can keep that capacity captive to our network by if they land in a spot where we don't have an OEM distribution, can we tap them to support our remarketing or used car efforts? It creates just a more synergistic network where we keep that capacity captive. And as more volume comes online in that remarketing space, I think it only accelerates the entire sort of SLA performance of the network. I don't know, Jeff, if you got any thoughts on the remarketing space.
No, I think just looking at it holistically, like we're not beholden to just an OEM customer or remarketing customer or one of those markets.
Right.
We get to piece the puzzle together with everybody. We get to sit back and look at what the right and best moves are to make in terms of building trucks and making sure that we're utilizing them to the best extent that they can be. It's I don't get very excited very often, but
heard this about you.
It gets me excited to think about all the things that we can do and all the things that we already are doing, really, but how much more we can bring improvement to the network. We're not only by developing capacity, but also redistributing that capacity in the most efficient manner possible with all the different touch points that we have. We're creating capacity just by the way that we're better optimizing the flow of vehicles in the network. I feel that we're really having an impact that is being positive, not only to our customers, but to the industry as a whole by just getting vehicles delivered and being able to piece together different origins, destinations, different customers that didn't flow that way before or didn't use that carrier before, because we're compiling capacity that wasn't in that market previously. We're really contributing to the solution as a whole, trying to get vehicles distributed.
Yeah. Remarketing is actually exciting, and people may not know this. It's the first space RPM moved our first vehicles ever in, nearly a decade ago. We understand some of the financial troubles maybe the end consumer may be in, which leads to more repos and more action in that space. But one of the ways that I get involved in the freight side is through moving big stuff, right? And I've seen an uptick in repoed semi trucks that we're moving on RGNs. We're piggybacking them down the highways right now. Bulldozers, everything you can think of that has wheels or tracks. We're seeing these interesting opportunities through remarketing. And it's been ramping up over the course of 2023. And that is another trend I do expect to see going into 2024 is remarketing to explode. And with that, the big, the weird, the heavy, the tracks. I mean, if somebody needs a tank, we can do it. That is where remarketing gets really exciting for me.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the big stuff, because as OEMs have struggled to produce vehicles to in-fleet vehicles into, fleet management companies and commercial consumers of different vehicles, that equipment has sat not being aged out or defleeted. And as OEMs have normalized production, I think we've seen more fleet units be produced, more availability of commercial equipment. And now those customers are thinking about, hey, I need to, this thing is way past end of life based on, my projections and depreciation. Now I'm thinking about, hey, I need to get a new unit. Now I can get it into the fleet. I can take this thing out. But sometimes when they're defleeting those, it's like in the worst possible condition. It presents certain equipment challenges for us. And I think a unique sort of offering we have here is the ability to bring in our freight product to support our vehicle distribution. And we've seen it pay dividends, on the back end for customer overlap and being parts of different networks. So I think tapping into that equipment set, which we keep captive through other commodities, and then we can sort of deploy it in these vehicle solutions for our fleet and remarketing customers, certainly has been a value add that I think will only grow as we think about aging equipment that needs to get off the road, new stuff coming into their fleet, and obviously the repo stuff, which is not something I love highlighting by any means, because usually there's some heartbreak involved with any one of those, but it's certainly a behavior or a sort of normal market trend as you think about the dynamics of financing and everything else. So
what you have me thinking of, Sean, is the story of RPM. Here we are. We're based out of Royal Oak, Michigan, the Motor City, Metro Detroit, all things, right? Everything from a spark plug into the OEM off the line, and then after it's leased and into the remarketing space. How many times do we actually touch those vehicles? It's such a sexy story to tell when I'm on carrier visits, and I know you do the same on customer visits.
yeah,
It's something that I'm really proud of, and I know we all are here at RPM.
yeah. The question is remarketing a bigger play for RPM due to macroeconomic factors? I would say yes. We've invested capital in having more sales reach in the remarketing space over the last 6 months, and now especially going into 2024. As I mentioned, that market cycle of used cars being at fever pitch. I mean, anyone who bought a used car in 2021, I'm sorry, because you probably paid a pretty nice premium on it. But as that market is normalized, as new volume from the OEMs has come into the fold, I think we've seen used car values soften, which means the residuals on vehicles has had to come down, and sort of there's been this market adjustment that's played out, which, if you think about the behavior in 2021, dealers were buying up any lease turn-in they could get their hands on because they didn't have new vehicles to sell. Most consumers got wise to this and said, I'll buy out my own lease on a residual value that was low versus the market, and just turned around and sold it in a lot of cases, or held on to it. And now as consumers are finally saying, okay, this vehicle is past when I wanted to own it, they're potentially greeted with being underwater and may need to hold on to the vehicle, or they're willing to pay much more in a payment to offset it. So there's sort of that weird consumer behavior that is driving a lack of volume in remarketing that's sort of through the normal channels of lease turn-in, goes to auction to a new dealer lot, and then it's in a consumer's hands again. But as some of those leases that were issued during 2021 are coming due, I think we're going to start to see the return to those normal channels, and we want to be there for the clients when that volume comes, because we see it sort of normalizing again in 2024. And I've had a number of remarketing clients say 2025 will be the reawakening fully, but as I mentioned, we're already seeing green shoots of it in that space going into 2024. I think we're getting the wrap it up cue, but I do want to give everyone one last kind of give me your last takeaway for 2024. We'll go into circle, and then we'll put a bow on it. Jeff, we'll start with you.
I'm just excited. Like, I feel like every day I come in, there's so much to do. There's so much, like, we're never short of things that need to get done to make it better. That it's right in front of us. There's so many things that we can improve for internally and externally. And I just love that feeling of always knowing that we can get better and that we can make lives better for our customers. We're actually doing that. Like if we're not just selling that, give us your freight. We are selling solutions, and we are giving them better options than what they have today. And we're solutioning with them, and it's an exciting position to be in. And I just see that we're going to have more of that and more need for that in 2024 as the volumes pick up.
Yep.
Yeah. 2023 for RPM, I think, was the year of automation, and the pace at which we automate is only going to speed up in 2024. And there's no stopping that. So the year of 2024 for me is about people management, actually, like turning my focus back to the people who are solving these complex problems for our customers, and that are carrier facing and owning these relationships, and getting them, even the carriers, to step out of their comfort zone, to maybe shift their fleet to a new area in the country, or to dabble in a mode that they haven't previously done, and teaching an open deck flatbed carrier how to move an OEM vehicle. I have to focus on the people, because the automation is already full steam. There's no stopping it, right? So that's what I'm excited about in 2024.
I think 2024, what I'm most excited about is really using some of these tools we know that are out there in the industry right now. I'm thinking it from a technology standpoint, but really sitting down with the experts we have within the company and external to the company, and building new solutions to meet challenges with our customer. I'm kind of speaking for IT as a whole, but definitely the product teams, and really building meaningful software that changes the way we do it. Is really our goal for 2024.
And as being the customer facing person in the room, all of what you said adds up to a much better customer experience. So I'm excited to hear the focus of all your collective departments. But I think if we get all of that right, 2024 will be the year that I think we continue to put ourselves in the conversation as that strategic partner with every one of our customers. We move beyond being just someone to move a vehicle or someone to pick up a load that day, and someone that they want to sit at the table with and say, how would you do it? Or what are your ideas on this challenge? And we've had those opportunities in 2023. And I think if 2024 greets us with double the amount of those opportunities, I'd say we've done it right, because that is what gets us, that's what gets me out of bed. That's what I know gets everyone here out of bed, is to do that with our clients every single day. And I guess I've been tasked with wrapping it up. So I just want to thank all of you, Synica, Tony, Jeff, for participating today. We're looking forward to 2024, obviously, and what it will bring. And certainly looking forward to engaging our clients and the carrier community around what we can do for them in 2024 as we move forward. So thank you all.